Break. Navajo 6-1, Navajo 6-1. This is Navajo 4-1 Victor, over. Hey, hiya Joel. It's me, Hayden Baumgartner, aka Bummy, from 2nd Platoon and the CP section of Delta Company. Or should have I said Navajo 3-1. I make you this tape to you, and I would also would like to include at this time the other Skytroopers who reenact the 3rd Platoon of Delta Company 2-5. Hiya fellas, how you doing? Yep, this tape I'm making to you, Joel, primarily per our phone conversations, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and of course the emails throughout the many months here. But I thought I'd just jot down some things here to you, different items that popped in my head, and I have an itinerary. I'm not really rusty at making tapes like this. I do a few with my Sergeant Major pal down in Fayetteville. He's in Fort Bragg, and my cousin who's out in Ohio. So I don't have any clear format, but I do have some notes down here, and I think these short little notes and stories might enhance the 3rd Herd's reenactments, or at least I would like to think so. So get ready. I'm going to bore you to tears, but hopefully you might enjoy some of this. So let's give it a shot. Okay. Well, I have down here written sea rations and LRPs. Well, I'm sure that you know what sea rations were, or are, and LRPs were a form of freeze-dried food. One of the things the first Cav had, which was a very novelty type of item, and I think it was, I don't know if other infantry brigades or other divisions in Vietnam did this, but you know, first Cav being kind of a high-speed unit, when it came to having for log, we had sea rations, of course. But we used to get a blend because we were air mobile. We got 2/3 sea rations and 1/3 what we used to call LRPs, which was freeze-dried, dehydrated food. The manufacturer, I believe, is still in exists today, but I think it was Mountain House was the outfit that used to supply the military freeze-dried rations. As you know now, the Army and all the military type people go to MREs. Now, my honest opinion is, I always thought the sea rations were a little bit better than MREs. MREs, after a day or two in my Army Reserve career, got kind of tiring, maybe due to flavor. But the sea rations, man, this Skytrooper here, I could exist weeks and weeks on eating sea rats out of a can, and sometimes you had to. But a little more detail, just talking about these LRPs. Pretty much, if you're familiar how MREs are packed, LRPs were kind of similar. You tear up the top of the package, and out came, I believe, a book of matches, an accessory pack, you know the drill, toilet paper, gum, sugar, salt, instant coffee, etc. And there might have been, if you got lucky, an item called a tropical chocolate bar. It was chocolate that didn't melt in your hands. I do recall seeing them for a short while back on the block when I got home. Apparently he didn't fare any better on the civilian side of the house as he did in the military. And I can assure you that the hills of Southeast Asia are full of these tropical chocolate bars. They were paddable. You could get them down. So let me just stop here for a second and see if I have anything else I want to cover on C rations. If you start doing a drill, I know sometimes I'm thinking you guys might purchase a drill, doing a reenactment. I'm thinking sometimes you guys will take standard cans of food, probably pull off the paper labels and spray them OD green. That's just my best guess. Hang on one second. Nope, I guess that kind of covers it for C rations, but I will follow up in closing. Your standard P38 was always close by. Sometimes, more often than not, and you figured out we would wear the P38 along with our dog tags. Or other times, First Cav would have the standard D rings. Carabiners, I believe, is the correct pronunciation. Maybe a hand grenade ring or a smoke grenade ring looped through that old P38, also attached to that big old D ring I just mentioned. And another popular item, if you went to flea markets, you could, or even check your parents' drawers. There was an item we called a B-52. And a B-52, was your standard beer can opener, also known as a church key. These were kind of status symbols to have when you were a grunt. Oh yes, and the last thing I'm going to mention on the C rations was a little game we used to play. Sometimes, you'd get bored. Gee, I wonder why while you're out in the field. If you weren't always fighting, of course. But a lot of times, one of my squad leaders showed me this, and it used to entertain my simple mind for eons. The plastic spoons that came with your standard C-Rats and also your LERP, when it was all done, you used to take the book of matches and you'd set fire to your plastic spoon at the end of the handle, and it would start to burn and melt. Well, then you'd hold it in your hands and you'd stand up, and as the fork was actually burning and melting, the resin would separate, obviously, from the heat and fall towards the ground. And when it did this, it made a unique zapping noise, like zip, 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 zip. And we used to call this an arc light. Just a game we played. I don't know if you need any vintage C-ration spoons to duplicate this short story. Perhaps maybe the newer ones might work. Not sure what the polymer compound they're using, but it would be pretty cool just to try out. I'd hate to burn up vintage C-ration spoons. Maybe they're not a popular item or a collector's item, but I have one, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to try it out for an arc light. But then again, you never know. Okay. One of my next topics of discussion is the wearing of your TA-50 gear. And I'm just assuming that you or anyone else who happens to be listening to this tape knows what your TA-50 gear is. Your steel pot, pistol belt, canteens, ammo pouches, small parts pouches, etc. Turns out that when you were out in the field, the first Cav really didn't have too much of an SOP of how you wore that equipment. When I was there, pretty much the standard rucksacks that you guys now have was the standard, the one with the early frame and the 3 outside pockets. Pretty much the fanny packs were non-existent at that time, from the time I served, from July 70 to July 71. I don't recall any Skytroopers wearing that particular piece of TA-50 gear. Pretty much pistol belt, you could rearrange anything you wanted to. Some people did wear them correctly, canteens in on the hips or ammo pouches in the front, but for the most part, there was no really set SOP for wearing them. A lot of times the ammo pouches were the old cloth M14 types. The nylon was not available at that time. However, nylon canteen covers were. A lot of guys would prefer to not attach the ammo pouches to the pistol belt. Very popular way we used to carry the 20-round mags. You might have seen them in pictures. And that would be take the cloth bandoliers that the 5.56 ammo came into, and to wear them. There was two different styles that were popular. For those who want a little protection from shrapnel, and of course we would think it would slow down the velocity of a 7.62 by 39. We would take that big heavy-duty black bobby pin, and we'd attach it dead center of the 7-pouch ammo bandolier, and it made an apron. You could put your left and right arm through it, and you had a little chest protection there. It wouldn't stop much, of course, but it gave you a false sense of security. And I wore that configuration numerous times. Also, I also had a SKS ammo pouch, which I picked up in my travels, and I used to put 20-rounders in that, and wear that very similar to the old World War II M1 Garand M-block type pistol, type ammo belt rather. I would say it was a fine mixture of the cloth and the nylon canteen covers. There was a transition there. They were both out in the field at that time. Other guys would also carry 20-round magazines and canteen pouches. They worked quite well. Also, any Claymore bandolier pouch that you had would hold buku, and that was also a popular form of carrying your 20-round mags. And I did mention to you that we used to load up 18 rounds instead of 20. More or less, it was an old wiseman's tale. People followed that practice, but I found out many years later that you really didn't have to do that. The spring tension was correct, and you could load 20. So if you're doing reenactments with either live ammo or blanks, go ahead and max them out to 20, unless you want to be purist, and you can still load them at 18. Individual discretion at this point. Okay. Yeah, and then sometimes we just take the seven pocket bandoliers. We used to cut the strap in the center, and we tie a loose fitting knot, and have them swung, attached to our hips over the pistol belt. Easy access, of course, to get to them. They did work quite well, by the way. And that was the most popular mode, was the bandolier type carry. Several of the guys, and me primarily, had the official GI nylon hammock. It was a standard piece of nylon cloth with, I believe, 8 feet of, it could have been 12 foot also, of nylon rope at each end. And some guys preferred the hammocks, which I did, of course, and a lot of guys were more comfortable sleeping on the ground with an air mattress or just a poncho liner. I think the big difference there was they always felt if you got hit nighttime, those in the hammocks would get knocked off or hit first. Never had that fear or phobia, and at that point, everybody's indestructible when you're that age. So I took the chance, and a lot of us did. I guess there were 7 of us, I said. But we just, had the hammocks low to the trees. A lot of times when your 6 was touching the ground, but it was still pretty comfortable, and it worked quite well. In the monsoon season, we used to take the we had ponchos, and we used to string the poncho over the hammock, also attached just above the trees to which the hammocks were attached to. And you kind of kept dry pretty okay. If it was really coming down, it didn't make much difference. The rain would seep down the tree bark and onto the nylon ropes and right into your hammock, and you get a nice, cool, refreshing, uncomfortable night's sleep. Kind of fixed that one time by getting a couple more D-rings, and we didn't have 550 cord back then, but we had other OD green type string, I'm thinking. We used to make a drain, a drip drain piece of string, so when the water came down, it worked okay. It wouldn't actually go down to the hammock. I think I'm kind of vague in my description there of that. Yes. As you can imagine, there was a transition of hammocks. The old 50s and 60s OD green heavy vinyl to the nylon. There was a good blend or combination of both. Of course, the trade-off being the nylon being lighter to hump around, and when you hung your hammock over your, as you were, when you hung your poncho over the hammock, a lot of times in the evening you could see daylight coming through. And so it was pretty clever, but the bottom of your smoke grenades, there was like a 1-inch square piece of OD high-speed 90-mile-an-hour tape that covered the bottom of the smoke grenades. When they went off, of course, just popped that right off. But those were our patches for the hammock. That's for the hammocks, for the ponchos, and they worked kind of well. Well, I guess now I'm probably going to talk about your type of bayonets and knives that were carried out in the field. Pretty much the standard was the your M7 type bayonet. Not many guys carried them in my platoon or in D company. Some had them, of course. There was no problem getting a hold of one. If you check out many pictures, you'll see that they were around. Believe it or not, I didn't see too many K-bars, although the K-bar was a very popular 7-inch blade. I did see more of the U.S. Air Force and U.S. Navy survival knives. The shorter version, that's 5-inch blade, and the saw teeth. They seem pretty popular. I'm thinking because when the traveling PX would come out, that's pretty much all they would carry. Good knife, very inexpensive, but certainly field worthy. Your big fear, of course, would be the leather handle getting, just rotting away. It did happen for hard use, but it didn't seem to be much of a major problem at that point. I know one fellow who carried a buck knife that he, civilian purchase. I think it was a 6.5-inch blade buck knife with the black leather sheath. I remember that. I personally did carry